Hello and good morning once again. Welcome back. Our next video is on DynamoDB. So DynamoDB is one of the proprietary products of Amazon AWS and is not available anywhere. DynamoDB is a NoSQL, very fast and flexible database and can scale from some bytes to petabytes or gigabytes of storages. Briefly talking about DynamoDB, that you need to know for your SysOps exam is it's a proprietary technology. It's very fast, highly flexible, NoSQL database service. It's a fully managed NoSQL database. That means you don't have to worry about how the data is managed, how AWS is going to manage it, backup, restoring, patching, etc. And the database is basically created on key value parameters. So that is how the data is stored. Highly popular in industries with gaming, web, and advertising. Huge amount of data can be taken. In addition to this, if we go back here and say it's a fully managed service, it's highly available, multi-AZ environment by default, and can manage tons of read and writes. And if we have a look here on the table, it also has got a DEX technology, which is DynamoDB accelerator. That's what we call it. And DEX provides high speed for read cache. It's serverless, provisioned, auto scaling, and it matches your demand capacity. It can scale out and scale in on demand. Data is stored on SSD with a fast throughput format. And we can store in 3 geographically distinct data centers for highly availability of data. Very fast, flexible, and good for read-heavy applications. Good example is again the gaming industry. Good example is also the stock exchange of financial markets, where tons of data is delivered and has to be made available at ultra high speed with super low latency. Can be delivered in single digit milliseconds, globally distributed. And over a period of time, it has also replaced elastic cache as a key value store, and queries can be on primary and sort index keys only. For DynamoDB, the reads are consistent. So this means that it has got 2 types, which is eventually consistent and strongly consistent. With eventually consistent, read output may be delayed, but with strongly consistent, its 100% write output is read after commit is made. So these are some of the things that you need to remember, that what is eventually consistent and what is strongly consistent. It has got a provisioned throughput capacity. So basically it means to say that it has got different read capacity and write capacity. So charged on the basis of on read and write capacity. Writes are expensive because writes, the size is just 1 KB that it writes to, or rounds out near to 1 KB per block of data, and reads are up to 4 KB or rounded to the nearest 4 KB. So if your data size exceeds more than 4 KB, that means you consume 2 read units, or we call it as RCUs, read capacity units. And similarly for write, if your data is like even 1.2 KB, you are consuming 2 write capacity units, until and unless how data is to be managed. And you only pay for the provision capacity and the storage you use, so you don't pay for anything extra. So if you scale out, your storage will increase, and you can authenticate your resources using IAM services. Can be integrated with AWS Lambda for if you want to trigger an event or anything that is associated to it. Maybe so Lambda is actually or trigger that we send, and we manage those events, so we can integrate with Lambda. So you have to watch a separate video on Lambda, how we create triggers. Can manage backup and restore. It's good for CloudWatch to monitor, and as I said, it provides a single digit millisecond performance for DEX accelerator. So going here onto the portal, if you go here, you can always create a database or a table. So I'll show you the basic table, how we create it. In addition to this, AWS also provides a NoSQL workbench if users wants to use them. So if we click here, so this is your NoSQL workbench. You can download it and you can use it instead of this if you want to create your databases, etc. from here. Anyway, so going back to your table, you can click on your table name and you can give any name to your table. So I'll call it as my DD table, which is your DynamoDB table. And the partition key is the primary key. The data is usually indexed on the primary key. So primary key, we can keep it as EMP ID. And you can always have sort keys as well. So the reason why we have sort keys is, for example, if we enter a primary key data, for example, you are buying something on the e-commerce portal, and if the same customer number is entered again, then it is your primary key. The data will not be written onto the database because you cannot duplicate the key. So to support that, we have a secondary key. So for example, time is the secondary key. So the transaction may happen, but at a new time. So we can write the data for the primary key with the support of the secondary key. So that is one of the reasons why we have a sort key, but it is optional. I'll leave it to default. And you can have default settings or you can customize the settings over here. So you have a DynamoDB standard, and you can also have it for infrequent access, where the data is infrequently accessed and you pay less for this. You can calculate your capacity, so size of the items for write, and item read per second, item write per second, and you can see whether you want eventually consistent, strongly consistent, or do you want transactional data based on the transaction. Similarly, for write also, you can have a standard or a transactional consistent, whichever way you want it. So we'll continue with whatever the default setting is given. Similarly, we can have the provision capacity, so it will automatically scale from whatever the requirement is once the target is reached to 70% of the capacity. And we will keep it to default. You don't need to know more than this for SysOps exam. You just need to understand what it is, and if you want to know, we have DevOps. In this we use DynamoDB, and we talk a lot in detail over there. So I'll just leave. Default encryption is based on AWS. You can manage with AWS managed keys or customer managed keys. And we will just leave to default, and we'll create the table over here. Now the table is created in the super speed, and it is available to you instantly. You can click on the table and you can start creating the items over here whenever you want. You can manage the tags. You can start creating the resources over here. So you can go and explore table items, and you can create item. So this is usually created. So employee ID, you can call it as E001, and you simply create an item and you see that you have a value. Now DynamoDB is a NoSQL database. It is not a structured database. Rows and columns cannot be the same. Rows and columns can differ, but the primary key has to be there for every row. That is the only key. And you can create another item, like for example, if I say E002 and I add a new attribute, which is for example a number, and I say here as EMP phone, and I make it as a number, and I make it as 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and I say create item. So now we have two items, E002 and the employee phone. We can create another one. It has to be E003, and I'm going to add a new attribute which is string, and I call it as emp underscore f underscore name, which is first name. We can just call it as Arman, and you can add new attribute which is also string, and I call it as emp underscore l underscore name, which is last name, and I simply type here Verma and I say create. So a new table row is created with this over here, and it is available. I can create more items over here. So for example, if I try to enter E003 again, it will decline to create because the primary key that we provided already exists. But we can add a new attribute, for example, a number, and that can be emp salary. And we can just say 1 2 3 4 5 and try to create it. It will still not create because there is no sort key associated with it. So remember, you cannot repeat the primary key until you have an associated sort key with it. As I said, like your customer number, you place the order with the customer number as the primary key and the order time. So the sort key or the secondary key will become the order time, and it will write the data because that is the key that is going to support the primary key, that it is a new value into the database. And now I create it, it is going to write over here. So remember, none of the rows and none of the columns are same. You can have all the rows and all the columns with some data, or you may not have all the rows and all the columns with same data or partial data. But remember, the primary key has to be there all the time. Now you also have option. I'll just enter one more value, which is E005, and I'm going to enter the number, and I'll call it as emp salary, and I say 1 2 4 5 6 7 8, and I just say create item, and I think, yeah, here it is, and we are able to create a similar record, or a similar value or a key value is inserted into the data. So everything is key and the value to it. And you can also enter array of data, but as I said, this is beyond the scope of this course. Now secondly, we have two commands over here, which is scan and query. So with scan, every time you run the scan command, it is going to run all the 5 commands all the time. So that means the more you scan, so for example, if your database contains million records and you are looking for an attribute name which is employee ID with a string and the number is E005, for example. Now what happens here is, if you have got million records, it is going to run through all the records and it is going to give you the output. That means the more records you have and the scan you run, that means more read capacity units you consume. The more read capacity units you consume, that means more you pay to the service provider. So instead of that, we always index the data and we can always query the data onto the table. So you can query it and you can say the partition key value, you can say E005. So partition key is emp ID that we have taken, and the value is E003. So in this scenario, sorry, I'll just remove it and I run it, and it is going to straight away jump to E003 and give the data. So instead of scanning and reading all the data, so millions of records, it will straight away jump to the index key and it will give you the output. So it has already indexed the data on the primary key, and instead of reading 1 and 2 before going to 3, it has just jumped straight to E003 and displayed the output over here. In addition to this, for demonstration purposes, there is something new that has been given by AWS, which is particle editor. You can simply select the data and you say select star from this table where employee ID is equal to partition key, or you can simply select like this, select star from my DD table, and it has printed all the 5 data for you. So you can also run your queries over here. You can run complex queries, SQL queries, and at any point of time you can download the data from the database and store it as a CSV value. But remember, my DynamoDB is a NoSQL database from which you can run the services over here. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions or queries, feel free to reach me. Thank you.